This woman licks the drops clean every day. When she's hungry, she eats a few mouthfuls of dead fish. In order for the baby to have milk to drink, she has to be like this because she's trapped in the endless sea. Even her only cell phone was broken and unusable. At first, there were dozens of stowaways in this container. Customs found them before they left the sea. Realizing something was wrong, the woman climbed onto the shelves, and it was this act that saved her from the massacre and saved her life. She thought she could return home safely. What she didn't realize was that the ship was caught in a storm at night and fell into the sea. The woman was knocked unconscious by the rough ride. When she woke up again, the container was seeping water like crazy. Luckily, the duct tape in the toolbox could seal the holes temporarily. In order to survive, the woman could only pry open the container to look for food, but there was nothing in there except for some electrical appliances and useless headphones. She was so desperate that she wanted to slit her wrists, but just as she was about to do it, the baby inside her kicked her. Perhaps it was her mother's love that awakened her hope to live. She tried to lie down and rest to save her strength, but at night, water started seeping into the container again. In less than 3 minutes, the water was up to her neck until she was completely submerged. Luckily, it was all just a dream, but at that moment, the container was still seeping like crazy. In order to survive, she could only pin her hopes on what was left inside the container. Luckily, she found a cell phone and had just put in a calling card when she got a call from her husband. Her husband comforted her and promised to come to her rescue in 3 days. But it didn't last long. The storm started again in the night. What's worse, the woman's water broke. She had no choice but to give birth in the water. Luckily, she was strong enough to give birth, but at this point, there's no telling when the container will float back to land. The woman and her baby are in mortal danger because they're both trapped in the ocean. There was nothing useful in the container. Even the food and water they brought with them are running out. To survive, she must at least open the container and ask for help. Luckily, the stowaway left behind an electric drill. She starts working without saying a word. Once she saw it at home, she could hope to climb out and ask for help. At first it went well, but after 3 days of sewing, the power went out. She hadn't eaten for 2 days and she couldn't take it anymore. I don't know how long it took, but the woman was awakened by a shower of rain. She rushed to collect fresh water from a box, and then the woman thought of the perfect way to do it. She pulls the saw plate away from her with the help of an external force, and then she lowers her center of gravity. This way, she could save energy and maximize her strength. Soon she saw the effect. Finally, after using her last ounce of strength, the plate opened. But now is not the time to be happy. The container is still floating in the ocean. The next day, she changed her baby's urine and realized that the smell actually attracted a lot of fish. She had a bold idea, fixed a sharp knife, and then a little aiming, stabbing at the fish, tried several times, and eventually realized that this method could not catch fish at all. But it wasn't long before she noticed the airplanes in the sky. It's the first time she's seen human activity. She couldn't miss the chance to call for help, so she immediately went back to the container and smashed down a lens. Even when she climbed up, the iron cut her thigh. She didn't dare miss her chance. She immediately took out the lens and shook it at the airplane to call for help, but it's impossible to see at an altitude of several thousand meters. The woman had no choice but to go back inside to treat her wound because she had a new plan. The woman made a fish net out of wires, then she threw the baby's feces into the trap. It's a very simple fishing device. In less than 3 minutes, a school of fish smelled it and came in. She seized the moment and lifts the net as soon as the fish swim in. The woman has been waiting for 3 days for this meal. It's awful, but it's the only thing she can do for her baby's milk, and there's no telling when the container they're trapped in will float back to land. Seeing that the water level in the container was getting higher and higher, the woman knew she couldn't wait to die. She put the letters of distress in a box and threw them all into the sea. As long as one of them floated back to the mainland, she would be saved. At night, they were about to go to sleep, but then there was a knocking on the container. She thought it was someone coming to save her, but she went up and realized it was just a box that floated back. Luckily, her cell phone came back on and she got a call from her husband, but she didn't expect the call to be a goodbye call because her husband was also a stowaway. And during the inspection, he was found and shot, and this call was her last breath. She was sad, but the woman knew she couldn't die because if she left, the child would become an orphan. I don't know how many days and nights have passed like this. The water in the container had reached the highest level. Instead of waiting to die, the woman built a simple boat. That way, even if the container sank, she and her child wouldn't drown. At night, the woman went back inside to get the last of the food, but just as she was about to go back up, her feet got tangled up in the bed. She almost drowned, but she holds her breath and dives underwater, trying to cut the rope. Soon the whole container was sinking. Good thing she cut the rope at the critical moment, but as soon as she got back to the surface, the baby was already washed away by the sea. What's worse, a whale swam towards the baby. Luckily, the whale didn't harm her son, but instead spouted out a little water to try to wake him up. Eventually, the woman found her son by following his voice, but by now, She's completely exhausted. She threw all the food she had left into the sea and said goodbye to her son. Luckily, a fisherman noticed her shortly afterward, but by the time the fisherman arrived, the child was all that was left. After rescuing the child, the woman noticed a rope and pulled it up curiously. Eventually, the woman was rescued. After resuscitation, the woman regained her breath, and the mother and son were finally rescued.